Hello everybody, and today we are going to be checking out a scenario where civilization starts over. We are now on episode 24 of our series, and in the last episode, we saw various events such as the full colonization of the entire world, some wars down here in Europe, and in South China. But if you have not seen the last video, then go watch it because there were a lot of important things that happened in that episode as well. But yeah, if you do enjoy today's scenario, then please consider liking and subscribing. We're on the road to 1.5 thousand subscribers by the end of the year. And yeah, let's get straight into our scenario. Now first, I'm going to go to this area, and this is where like 90% of the world's countries are. And I've done something for every single country, and that is ideology. The color inside each of these circles represents the kind of ideology that the country has, and I'm going to explain each one. So first of all, probably one of the largest, most widespread ideologies is true monarchy. Basically, this means that a lineage of family has controlled the country for a very long time, and this is represented by a dark purple circle. For example, Germany, Poland, Benelux, France are all pure monarchies. And the highest concentration of them are of course in Europe, but that also means around the world as well, because the colonies are controlled by true monarchies, but you can also see a couple of them scattered about over here in Asia. But now, if you see a regular purple circle, that means it's a constitutional monarchy. And basically what a constitutional monarchy means is that the king corresponds his actions with a constitution. For example, remember all of the weak states that were here that united into the greater Romania? They made a constitution for that union, but there is also still a monarchical lineage still in power, but this power is being checked by the constitution that formed the union. But next, we have institutional monarchy, and you are going to see that institutional monarchy is represented by a pink circle, but it also has a different color on the left side. Basically, what an institutional monarchy is that it basically means that the monarchy was not given to them by their own choice. It was instituted by an outside power. And that's what the left side of the circle represents. The right side represents that they are an institutional monarchy, and the left side represents what is, institutionalizing them to do this. For example, Ukraine is an institutional monarchy, and this was institutionalized by the brown team, so you see their color is in correspondence with the left side of the circle. And these are scattered around a lot of places. For example, there is also an institutional oligarchy, which was instituted by the brown team. Basically, just the left side of the circle represents who it was instituted by, if at all. But now we come over here to this yellow circle, and this is Russian nationalism. Basically, this is a special ideology that was culminated by the Russians, and I think it is a very fitting ideology for them since they have been a lot of places and they've been able to develop their sort of ideology through a lot of philosophies. And yeah, Russian nationalism, it's a little hard to explain, but it's sort of like an autocracy held by a group of elites. But yeah, that's a bulk of the ideologies explained, but the rest of them are now here in Eastern Asia. Dark gray means dictatorship, so that means that a leader is ruling with the power of hate. And then you have communism. Communism has been adopted over here in Azerbaijan as well as South China. We have seen this been explored in the past couple of episodes, and yeah, it's just communism. Now, of course, communism would develop into different variants, but this is the purest, most primitive form of communism. But next, we're going to go over here to this teal circle, and this is Eastern Asianism. Basically, if you remember, the Eastern Asian civilization developed a lot more differently and acting under their own accordance compared to the main world, which consisted of India and the Middle East. So these guys all have similar ideologies, but if you go over here, it's going to be a lot different because they developed under their own accordance. Basically, what Eastern Asianism is, in a very simple term, kind of like in a nutshell, is that it is an oligarchy, but it is also overlooked by a democratically elected leader. But that is opposite over here in India, where we see a new ideology that hasn't really been tried and tested in real world, but it is a dictatorial oligarchy. And here's the best way to explain it. Remember how I said there were the 5 oligarchs that ruled the red team? And they are ruled and overlooked by a supreme leader who was not democratically elected by the people. So the dictatorial comes from the supreme leader that is ruling over and overlooking the oligarchs. And the oligarchs are basically just boiled down to this light green circle, of which the brown team is adopted. And yeah, this is a very interesting ideology that is very specific to this area of the world, also being adopted by Northern Australia, but there are only 3 countries that have it, like I said, Northern Australia, North Bengal, and India. And finally, we have oligarchy. Basically, everyone knows what this is. It's just a class of elites that rule the country from different segments of said country. But yeah, that is basically the ideologies now explained. And now we can get into some action. The action will have to be delayed for a little bit, and that is because I do want to clear something up, and that will be the protectorate states. The protectorate states are going to have an institutional of whatever ideology their forefather is. For example, the Benelux country is a pure monarchy. So that means that these guys are going to have a Benelux institutional monarchy, which is just going to act with accordance with the Benelux government, but it is also going to be sort of under their own accord. It's a little bit complicated. But yeah, with that out of the way, we can now go to our first war, which is going to break out over here in Eastern Asia. And it is going to be in Korea, but it's not going to be an outward war, it is going to be an inward war. A group of people are going to rise up in defiance of the Korean government over here in the eastern areas of their country. And these guys, they're communist. Korea is acting under the accordance of Eastern Asianism, and basically these guys are the local farmers, and if you remember, then the oligarchs are ruled by a democratically elected leader, but this area did not get much representation in electing that democratic leader. So I guess you could call Korea a flawed Eastern Asianism country. But this group is definitely not solidaral, as there are two sides to it. There is a southern half which is going to declare itself a separatist movement, not really as to form a new state, but to form a sort of autonomy and repair their relations with Korea. But this communist revolution is going to want to give themselves a big old red circle. And of course there are a couple other countries that are going to want to exert their dominance and influence in Korea because it is a very important area. So now we're going to see a second rebellion popping up, and we can see the official starting of the Korean Civil War. This yellow area is going to be in support of joining China, and of course, like I said, the economic alliance between all these guys, this was sort of brought by a non-defensive pact. But of course, China can do whatever they want because there's not really bound by military treaty, so this is technically legal. Morally it isn't, but by paper it is. But finally, we're going to see a group break out over here inside of Northern Korea, and this is going to be a group of radicals. Now, I am going to color them a little bit differently because it looks a little bit like the troop color of Sakhalin. But these guys are going to be the radicalist group. They have very left-wing ideology. And being very left-wing ideological, they are going to be a form of communism, but they are not going to act in accordance with this kind of communism because this is pure communism, but these guys are trying to develop their own more autocratic version of it. But now focusing on the main thing, it's just Korea is getting pummeled. And I believe, no, Korea does not have provinces, and that's definitely something I need to work on, provinces. I'll probably do a live stream sometime in the future. Or I may have already done the live stream, I have no idea. But this western area, now being disconnected from Korea, is going to fall over to left-wing forces, and they're going to get all the way over to this corridor, in which the Chinese and communists are going to cut them off so they cannot take any more territory. Even though communism is technically a radical ideology, these guys are taking it tenfold, and that is not a very popular thing. But now we can see that Korea is going to subside. Just kidding, Korea actually has a military, believe it or not. They're like one of the strongest countries in the world. They did get knocked off from their perch. They were the previous number 9 strongest country in the world. But now, you know, they're still strong. And there are no operatives from China that are in this rebellion, so that means that Korea is going to be able to move out freely and openly, taking back a lot of this territory, moving the rebels back immensely. Eventually, the separatist movement that wanted more autonomy is just going to rejoin back with Korea, but the communists were ready for this, and they're just going to pounce on that pocket, and they're going to be able to push back Korean forces. But the Korean forces are a lot more focused on taking out this radical group, because if they do get their independence, then that would definitely not be good for the world. And also, I do want to bring something up, and that is that the tripolar system, basically, the forefathers of the alliance who are in accordance of the tripolar system all have different ideologies, of which being oligarchy, dictatorial oligarchy, and Russian nationalism. So that's just piling on the reasons of why this tripolar system has heated up so quickly. But now we're going to go back to the Korean Civil War. But now we are going to see Sakhalin getting involved, helping out their ally in Korea. But China is not doing that, as they are, of course, supporting this yellow group. But of course, not all of the rebels are in support of each other. The yellow group is going to send their militias here into the radical society, taking over the entire southwest. And Sakhalin is going to move further into Korean territory, now reclaiming it for Korea. But of course, that land will be exchanged in the peace treaty. And the radical society is almost wiped out, but they are able to live on, taking a whole bunch of territory now out west, and they're able to stay like this for a while. Eventually, when the communists push back the Sakhalis, is that what we call them? Yeah. They're going to declare their neutrality and just talk things out with the Korean government, in which they're able to talk some stuff out. But the radical society, they're non-solidaral, which is in reference to them actually being able to just rise up anywhere, which means a group of radicals are going to appear inside the Chinese-aimed rebellion. They're even going to have a militia being sponsored by them, which was a part of the Sakhalin military, but is now going to fold over to the Radical Society, and this is pretty ugly. Of course, the Chinese supporting group is going to wipe out these two southern pockets, but with their military being reallocated to there, the Radical Society is able to take over their north, and yeah, basically this is very weird. The Koreans are going to re-inherit this eastern territory, now being able to fight against the Radical Society, but the Radical Society is going to be able to make their foothold stronger by kicking out all of the Sakhalin forces and reallocating eastward, now kicking back a whole bunch of Korean military. Eventually, all of the rebels except the Radical Society is going to aim their sights towards the Radical Society, which means that the Koreans, Chinese supporting, and the communists are working in accordance to try and take down this Radical Society. But eventually, their military has been drained, and they are forced to work out a peace treaty in which the radicals are forced into existence, not by themselves, but by Koreans, Chinese, and communists. But now we can see this peace treaty and how it's going to turn out. Alright, and this is what we see our peace treaty looking like. We see that the Chinese supporting group is of course going to be annexed into China. The communists get their independence, and surprise, surprise, they are going to adopt the ideology of communism, so we can now put a big old red circle right there. And we're going to have to move this down, as now the reallocation of their territory means that they have a lot less territory. And of course that is evident with the Radical Society now getting their independence, and they are going to be situated up here. And I wonder, what ideology do you think they could be? Okay, I'm drawing their circle, giving you a hint. It is a far right ideology. And their color is, drumroll please, gold. Now, if you look at the map legend, that's not something that is here. But wait a minute, I need to put something new because this is a brand new ideology. And that is because, ladies and gentlemen, this is fascism. Fascism has now appeared inside of our world, and it has appeared over here in Korea. So, let me get something out of the way. This fascism, which is the far right ideology, the world has not really tested this in the past. Of course, we've seen far-right ideologies such as dictatorships, which rule by hate, but fascism is probably the most right you can go, except if it's like national something. But yeah, with that done, we can see a new ideology of fascism, and it is going to be very precedented in the future episodes. But we are going to have to give these rebellions their own capitals. So the fascists will have their capital here, and the communists will have theirs down here. And yeah, we have a couple of new countries over here in Korea. But now I'm going to go over here to Egypt, and I'm going to be turning on the military alliance, and that is because they are going to leave the Square Alliance. That is because they did get a lack of help from the Russian country, and of course, with that, that means that you are not, incited to actually trust the Russians. And yeah, now these guys are unaligned, they are declared neutral, and that might not have been the best idea since you have a very aggressive neighbor to your south, but that would probably incite the tripolar system to just go. So maybe Western Arabia should think twice before invading Canaan. But with the exiting of the Egyptians from the Square Alliance, they are going to gain a new member, and that new member is going to be over here in Azerbaijan. And now it is finally revealed that the Russians were not funding this rebellion. It was funded by India. India wanted to create turmoil between Turkey and Russia, and of course this is unbeknownst to the Turkish and the Russians, they do not know this. But I am telling you now that it was the Indians that were funding this rebellion in Azerbaijan, but it is a little bit ironic and suspicious that they did join the Square Alliance, but that'll have to resolve itself in the future because now we see the alliance map will look like this. But now we're going to be going down south here to South Africa, where we're going to see this dispute finally get solved. Basically, the Benelux country is in very tight accordance with the Iberians, and they're able to work out a deal. Basically, the Benelux has a duke, and that duke is willing to give up his position for a status quo in the monarchical family. You can see that both of these countries are monarchies. And the Duke of the Benelux country is willing to give up his position and replace himself with a position of the Iberian royal family. So that means that now with the Duke of the Benelux country is now Iberian. And with that comes at a cost, and that comes with the cost of the Benelux country being able to inherit this territory. And yeah, now we have been able to resolve this, but it is at the cost of the Benelux losing a little bit of influence. Now, I'm not confident that spiel I just had made any sense, but all you need to know is that the Duke of the Benelux country has been replaced with a member of the royal family from Iberia, and in turn, the Benelux country is going to acquire this disputed territory, and everybody is happy except the previous Duke. but he can just go cry. But next we are going to be going over here to southern Sweden, and they are going to be having a civil war. And there is not much they can do about this civil war because they are a relatively weak country, but there is an outside operative that is funding this rebellion. And basically the South Swedish are going to be fully pummeled, and their ideology is going to change out of this war. So now we can look at a peace treaty, and in this peace treaty absolutely nothing changes except an idea. And that idea is going to bring democracy to this world. Democracy, of course, has been an idea in this world for a very long time. It has never gotten the, air behind its back to be institutionalized. But now I am very proud to say that democracy has found its way into our series. But of course, kind of like the beta version of democracy, but it is still a very good sign that it has showed its face here. And with the era behind democracy's back, we're going to see a couple of countries institutionalize their sort of government. Sorry, my voice is not working. So Albania is now going to switch over and abolish their monarchy and absolutely express their democratic constitution. Because of course, purple means constitutional democracy, but if they just abolish their monarchy, then they abide by a constitution which reckons democracy within the people. But we see two other countries doing this democratic thing. It is going to be this orange English country and this northern Scottish country. And yeah, we have now seen the birth of two ideologies in this episode, which is pretty major in my opinion. And yeah, I just realized my voice has been very skippy and not very good at talking in this episode, my bad. But we are going to see one final event break out inside of our video, and that is going to be over here in Hokkaido. Now, Hokkaido has been a very united area for a very long time, but they are going to be forced to reckon with the effects of downfall. And that is because a rebellion is going to break out here in South Japan, and that is a very common theme in this episode with rebellion. But this rebellion is actually going to be supported by the Hokkaido people, and that is because they have kind of lost their grip over here in South Japan. And that is going to lead two groups to get their independence, one being over here in these two southern islands, and the other one getting them their independence here in the south of Honshu. And I actually did make major cities for this, so these guys are going to have their capital here, and these guys will have their capital here. And we now see two more countries here in southern Japan. But not too surprisingly, they are both going to be Eastern Asianist countries, with their government being modeled after the Hokkaido government. That was pretty inevitable. But with that, we are going to see, actually I lied, there's still one more event in this video. And you know what, actually, screw that, we're not going to have any final events in this video. It's just, I'm just going to do a couple more things, because, pacing. Scotland, Eastern England. It's going to break up even more. A pink country is going to break away from the Scottish country, and in turn, we're going to see the Northern Scottish are going to be able to overrun the Southern Scottish, and a new pink country is going to be born as the successor state of Scotland, and their capital is going to be over here inside of this major city, looking like this. But they are immediately going to start fighting with the Orange country, and that actually goes quite well for them. They go down south and they get threateningly close to their capital, in which the Orange team is forced to listen to their terms, and they get a little something like that. And yeah, now we have the British Isles changing a little bit. But now I'm going to shift our focuses back over here to this area. This area has been heating up a lot over the past couple episodes, and it's going to heat up even more. And that is not to their own fault, but that is because we are going to see one final rebellion, I swear it's the final one, over here in the dark gray team, and that is going to be all the way down here with a maroon-ish rebellion breaking away. And actually, you can't really see that color very well, so something like that does it well, yep. Actually, nope, you know what? We're just going to do dark red. That's fine. And surprisingly enough, the dark gray team, although being a pioneer of exploration, is going to be forced to subside over to this rebellion, and their capital will be over here in this major city. But now comes a very difficult dilemma. Let's see, they are bordered by all three alliances, of course, with their southern border being Purple Persia, involved in the Diamond Alliance. To their west is the Afghan country, who is in the Square Accordance, and to their east is the Radical Red team. And now they have a very important decision to make, and that is, who are they going to side with if a possible war breaks out? Well, nobody. They're not gonna side with anybody, because that would probably bring on the end of the world. But these guys are going to be dictatorial oligarchy. But with that, we are going to see the end of today's video. And if you guys did enjoy today's scenario, then please consider liking and subscribing. We are on the road to 1,500 subscribers by the end of the year. I'm sorry if my voice did stutter a lot during this video. That is because I'm trying to pump out a lot of pre-recorded videos so I can last them to have every day over Thanksgiving break. And when you're seeing this, Thanksgiving break is basically almost over, and that is indicating that I am almost done with pre-recording a whole bunch of videos. And that also indicates that I am tired and I need a little bit of a break from recording videos So the pre-recorded videos are going to last Thanksgiving break, and hopefully I'll be able to recuperate my mind. But yeah, if you did enjoy today's scenario, then please consider liking and subscribing. But in addition to that, you could also go down and ring the bell and join the Discord server. It's a lot of fun. I just actually released a new update for the Discord server, so go check it out. And on that note, I will see you guys in tomorrow's video.